here's a simple test. Let's turn off all the renewables and see how the base load goes, supplying us with our power for, let's say, a week. And then let's switch off all the base load and see how renewables go, supplying us with our power. And let's just see whether we really feel like it's 50-50.
Yeah.
Right? How the work is being done. I don't have my poker chips with me, but I did that video talking about the bid stack and how that works. And renewables, so-called, when they come in, when the wind blows or when the sun shines, they displace a lot of the base load power. But the base load power has to be there.
Yeah.
And this is what the batteries are all about. And this is what Snowy 2.0 is all about. They're trying to create this ability to store the energy that is produced by the solar panels. It creates so many problems in the grid. But I want to address one thing specifically. So the idea that it's the amount of power that matters is asinine. It is such a complete failure to recognize the complexity and the seriousness of power has to be introduced into the system in exactly the same moment when it's needed.
Yeah.
And this is a balancing act. A modern electricity grid is a miracle. This is a miracle of engineering. It is phenomenal that people even figured out that this was possible, let alone are doing it. And we take it for granted, and all the lights and everything surrounding us now are all being run out of this thing called a grid. They are marvels of engineering, and the people that keep them running are basically modern day wizards. And so the idea that, we're just going to measure the amount of electricity that was put into the grid. We're not going to look at the fact that it wasn't being supplied when we needed it necessarily. It was just being supplied when it was available.
Yeah.
We're not going to look at the fact that it doesn't have a grid making capacity, the ability to set the frequency of the 50 hertz alternating current. This is something that we rely on massive steam turbine driven electricity generators to do, because they have an enormous amount of mass, so they're inherently stable. We need base load power to actually provide us with the frequency that everything else can then detect and feed off and match.
Yeah.
But we need that grid making capacity. That comes from the huge heavy industrial aspect of your base load power. It's also not taking into account the fact that coal, and both forms of coal, black and brown, are still very significantly cheaper than renewables. And they hide that. And this is what my video about the bid stack was all about. They hide that and they pretend that renewables are cheaper. And I won't re-prosecute that here. You can find that video on my channel. But they hide that within the reality of how the bid stack works. So we have a situation where, yes, in pure kilowatt hours consumed in the grid, because every time renewables ramps up, we ramp down base load, then yes, in the end, we consumed those kilowatt hours. But if it weren't for the base load, we would have spent half of the time with no electricity at all. You take that out of the equation, the grid collapses instantly. So one of these things is not like the other. One of them is freeloading, essentially, off the other.
Yeah.
And is actually making the other more expensive, because now we have baseload power plants having to ramp up and down and try and load match, not just with the daily load, which is somewhat predictable, but with the daily renewable input, which is far less predictable. They have to run much less efficiently. And so you've got a situation where the cost of the baseload power is being driven through the roof. The real cost of renewables is not just the cost of the electricity that it puts into the grid, but also the cost that it adds to the baseload power. Even when that electricity is not going into the grid, it's made the whole grid so much more expensive, which is why everywhere you look in the world, wherever the percentage of renewables goes up, the price goes up. There are no exceptions to this.
I'd be interested to see how your average consumer feels about their electricity and their gas bill just getting tripled, quadrupled, and it'll get to a point where, I mean, we already saw stories around this year about pensioners not being able to turn their heaters on because it's just too expensive to run. Because there's all this discussion around, you can put in new reverse cycle systems and that use electricity, and it's like, well, okay, cool, but what if you spent all the money 15 years ago putting in the gas ducted heating? So now that's become useless or redundant.
It's a stranded asset. Something that's been invested in that is still perfectly functional, but you can't make it functional.
But you've all of a sudden deemed that that's not right. And it's like when Victoria was trying to ban natural gas, and they're like, all the people with the gas stoves are going to have to convert. I'm like, cool, so now everyone has to pay thousands of dollars?
Stranded asset. And, stranded assets are a big problem at farm level, at industry level, et cetera, but it happens at a domestic level as well. So there was a report that came out from the National Energy Commission that I've just done an interview with Joe Nova about, which will be coming out, I think, tomorrow. And the National Energy Commission basically said, we will have to keep subsidising renewables until coal gets switched off. Right, which is an admission. That for as long as coal is there as a comparison, it's not competitive. It's only once we switch off coal, we get rid of that out of the system, and all the prices are up here, then finally renewables won't need subsidies anymore. So it's the clearest confession that I've seen from any kind of authority that renewables genuinely cannot compete on price with coal. It just can't. They will have to be subsidised for at least, this is according to them, for at least the next 10 years until coal gets switched off.
I find it really interesting because, like, this is not the same topic, but seeing how we've been pushing down the EV road with cars, and now you're seeing all of a sudden a renaissance of petrol-powered engines coming back for a multitude of reasons. I find that, I'm just interested to see, once these bills just get to the point where people are like, I can't actually have electricity in my house, it's too expensive. People will be begging for coal to come back.
Look, bills, schmills, people freezing to death in their homes, whatever. What's exciting to me about all of this is that Formula One are going to be returning to a larger number of cylinder engines, and the sound is going to get better. Unfortunately, not straight away, because these things do get planned many years in advance, and so they've already planned the next engine formula, which starts next year, and that probably won't be much better than what we've currently got. It might be a little bit, but probably not much. But the one after that, there are genuine discussions about going back to V8s and V10s in Formula One. That I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I agree. Well, wouldn't you know it? Back again. You could not help yourself, could you? I get it. I am absolutely ridiculously good looking. So you should probably go and subscribe. And whilst you're there, maybe shout us a coffee. I have to put up with this guy every week, twice a week, for you and your entertainment, much to my displeasure. But alas, I do it because I am a virtuous soul. And you're welcome. So please subscribe and tell other people to go watch because I need help.